Hello and welcome to Run My Arts watercolor tutorial series. So as you saw the preview, I'm going to show you how to paint these tiny little flowers which range from blue shades to violet shades called Forget Me Not. And since they are tiny little flowers, I'm going to demonstrate them as a small size painting. As you can see here, I'm going to paint them on an A6 size watercolor cold press paper, and thickness is 300 grams per square meter, which is half of A5 size. Since the flower shades are predominantly blue, so I'll be using various types of deep blue shades, and occasionally I'll be using a little bit of violet and magenta shades. So you can choose to use any blue of your choice, as in Prussian blue, ultramarine, or even sapphire blue. And I'll be using the Da Vinci Casa Neo mop style brush with a narrow tip of size 2. I would suggest you to use a brush which range from size 6 to 8, which has a similar shape. So in order to paint these tiny little petals, you will have to focus using the tip of the brush. So you're not going to press too much, but as you see here, I'm just dragging using the tip of my brush from the outer corner and moving it inwards. And as you paint the petals, you will have to leave a small gap in between where the pistil would be painted later on. So basically there's a white space in between the 5 petals that you're going to paint. So here's another angle for you to witness the brush strokes that I'm making over here. As I said, just start from the outer corners and drag the tip of your brush inwards, and you'll form these tiny little petals. It's quite easy as long as you do not press too much and have some brush tip control. And if you prefer to use a smaller size brush, go ahead. And as I paint this, you would notice that there are some color variations, since the Forget Me Not flowers ranges from various blue to violet hues, as I mentioned earlier. So you can create the same color variations as what I'm doing over here, because I don't want the entire painting to look flat. Over here I'm using a magenta mixed with the earlier blue shades, so it arrived at this light violet shade from the color mixing, which looks interesting. So color variation adds more vibrancy to the entire painting. So repeat the process as you create more petals and have some variation in their positions so that they look more random. And not to forget, they don't have to be of the exact size, as long as they look like they're from the same cluster of flowers or bunch of flowers. And you can even paint half of the flower shape, as in flower buds or flowers underneath the clusters, to create an impression or a natural look of the flower bunch. Otherwise it might look like a very symmetrical or organized looking drawing. So you want to add some natural touch to it by creating all these loose shapes and random positions. So I just thought I would demonstrate using a smaller size brush how to paint the same flower petals. So I'm using a micro brush from Da Vinci Cosmotopes pin series of size 0. So for those of you who are not comfortable using a round brush or big size brush, you can use this micro brush to paint this type of tiny flowers as well. And of course, since this is a smaller size Bristol, the method of painting definitely differs from the one that I used using a bigger size Bristol. Alright, done with the petals. I'm going to paint in the pistil, which is the center part of the flowers. I'm going to use lemon yellow, and I'm using the same micro brush since this is in a form of very tiny dots. So I'm just painting into the middle part of all the flowers. And once the painting is almost dry, as in 3/4, if you notice a little bit of wetness, it's okay as long as they are not flowy. I'm going to spray some water onto the entire painting to reactivate a little bit of that paint, dried paint. As you can see here, the shine onto the painting as I spray the water. If you are afraid to do this, then you can test it out on another piece of watercolor paper by just painting one particular petal and spraying water. So moving on, and once there's wetness onto the paper, I am just using my finger to just drag those pigments. As you can see, I'm just dragging softly and gently all those petals to encourage the entire petals to start bleeding. And as you can see, as I drag, those paint pigments have started to bleed onto the white areas, the white gaps that I had earlier. If you find this messy and would like to use a brush instead of your finger, go ahead. I just thought this is a fun way of putting your fingers to use, and I would say personally we have more control using your finger because it's not a very extremely wet painting and you have full control of the movement of the pigment. So in case some of you are wondering, why did I destroy a perfectly looking flowers that I painted earlier? I would say this is to take advantage of the characteristics of watercolor paints where they are transparent and flowy when you use water. And the result is it looks more natural in character, and instead of just appearing as tiny little flowers floating in the air. So be bold to try this technique, and I'm pretty sure you will love the technique, especially when it comes to just using the fingers. And over here I have moved on painting the leaves of the forget-me-not flowers. It's just a basic looking leaf, slightly long. If you notice the natural shape of the flowers leaves, so it's just some permanent green shade. I'm painting it using the wet on dry technique, and it's pretty basic. So the same green shade, a little bit of paint spatters here and there, and we're going to allow this painting to dry completely. So once the painting is completely dry, I'm going to make second layer of the flower painting as a touch-up, but not too many, just a few of those flower painting here and there to fill in some of the gap. You can also add in some flower buds randomly here and there in this painting stage. Alright, time for some touch up onto the leaves. I'm just lightly painting the veins on the leaves using the same micro brush. And once painted the veins, I'm just giving them some light washes using a clean damp brush because I want to have the washout look similar to the flowers that I painted. And this could help you to soften all those hard lines. So coming back to the pistil of the flowers, I'll notice that there are some dark spots, which is a natural appearance of the flower. So I'm using a deep shade, which is a mix of sapphire with indigo. You can also straight away use a black shade, since this is just very minor part of the flower, but still impactful. So you can use a ready-made black shade if you want, or right away use sapphire. I'm just dotting them onto the middle part of the flower, which has already been stained with the earlier yellow shade. So just use a micro brush as the best way to paint in these tiny little dark spots. I also noticed that there are some white colored shades around the pistil part of the forget-me-not flowers. So in order to stain the flowers with these white elements, I'm using a pastel pencil, which is Pit Pastel from Faber-Castell. If you would like to use white acrylic paint or white gouache paint, you can do so. I thought since this is a very small size painting, I thought the best way would be by using a pastel pencil. Alternatively, you may also use white gel pen, white marker, or even a white watercolor pencil. So whichever works the best for you, or whichever that's available at your desk. However, if you think this part doesn't matter to you, then you can skip the whole step. So to finish up this entire painting, I'm just going to lightly paint the tiny little pedicels that holds the flowers together, just to create some extra dimension onto this entire painting. So once again, I'm using the same micro brush and lightly painting those pedicels, just lightly. You don't want a very sharp looking lines, and you can use any green shade of your choice. I'm using the same green shade that I used to paint the leaves. And the painting is complete. So we have managed to transform a basic looking painting into a very lively and realistic looking painting. So if you liked this entire forget-me-not tutorial, then don't forget to give me a like and also share this video with your family and friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'll see you in another tutorial. Thank you. Bye.